Hello, eighth grade social studies students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have got your notes for Chapter 13, Section 2 Statehood for Florida and Texas. So, as we go along, make sure you write in what you need, and we're going to talk about Florida. Florida became a territory of the United States back on July 17th, 1821. But by 1837, the territory of Florida had around 48,000 people, making it eligible, almost eligible, for statehood. So enslaved people at this period of time made about half of Florida's overall population. In 1839, delegates of a constitutional convention approved the Constitution for Florida, which would allow for slavery, and it was sent for Congress for approval. But it would take a few years. In 1845, after 6 years, President John Tyler signed a bill into law that would have Florida enter the Union as a slave state, while Iowa would join the Union as a free state in 1846, and that's kind of how it kind of comes to be. So, Texas, on the other hand, Americans believed that they had a right to claim Texas because they believed it was part of the Louisiana Territory, which they had bought from France back in 1803. And granted, there is a little bit of Texas that would have been included in that. In 1821, Mexico had won its independence from Spain and controlled the land that is now part of Texas. Non-Native American populations of Texas was around 3,000 people who were mostly Tejanos. That would be basically individuals who are Mexican but claim Texas as their home. And that's actually a term that we still use today when we talk about people who have a Mexican ancestry but are by and far Texan Americans that have been living there for generations, even before probably the United States became the United States. So, to encourage settlement, Mexico offered tracts of land to people who would bring their families and settle there as Mexican citizens. One of the men who did a lot of recruiting, um, we see below here, it's part of the old 300, which was the name given to these first American families, carefully recruited by Stephen F. Austin to settle in Texas. And if you take a look at the map, you can kind of see where the Dallas Fort Worth area is. And this little strip of land that you see Austin, Texas, the Bay City, it's kind of north of what is now present day San Antonio, all the way back to Big Springs and so forth. But tensions developed between these Americans who refused to follow the rules that Mexico had set out for them. And one of them was to learn Spanish, and probably a very important one was to convert to Catholicism. Some of these families obviously had no intentions of making a religious conversion. They also were not very, the Mexicans that is, were not very interested in slavery, and they had been banning it. Unfortunately, some of the original 300 had brought their enslaved people with them. So that's going to cause a problem. So the 1830 decree issued by Mexico was designed to stop all immigration from the United States into Texas. American settlers Stephen Austin and also Sam Houston tried to make peace with the Mexican leaders. This failed. And so in 1833, Stephen Austin presented Mexico with demands to remove the ban on Americans and make Texas a separate state. 1835, Mexican General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, who happened to be the president of this wonderful nation of Mexico, took an army into Texas to punish the rebels. And in December of 1835, Texans had captured the city of San Antonio from a larger Mexican force. Obviously, Santa Anna is not going to stand for it. So, Santa Anna's army marched into San Antonio in late February 1836. They found basically a small Texan force of about 180 soldiers that had barricaded themselves into the Alamo. The Alamo was a Catholic mission. The picture that you saw on the previous page probably makes it look maybe not all that big, and it really wasn't all that big. Matter of fact, the church there didn't have a roof on it. It's kind of an open air kind of congregation. It was more like a fort. It had a wall around it, and that's kind of where these Texan soldiers barricaded themselves. And thus we have the Battle of the Alamo that took place over 13 days, lasting to kind of the beginning of March 1836, when Santa Anna's forces used cannon fire to smash the Alamo's walls and killing a lot of the defenders. That included a very famous guy named Davy Crockett, who you may have seen movies through the Disney Company, and Jim Bowie, who is known for Bowie knives, and a man named William Travis. Although the Texans lost the battle at the Alamo, these defenders brought Texans needed time. And on March 2nd, 1836, American settlers and Tejanos declared independence of what they call the Republic of Texas, becoming their own little nation. So the government was established, and Sam Houston was named as their commander in chief of the Texan forces. Houston assembled an army of around 900 men at San Jacinto, which is near present day Houston, Texas. And Santa Anna happened to be camped nearby with about 1,300 of his soldiers. And on April 21st, 1836, the Texans launched an attack while Santa Anna's men were napping. It was afternoon siesta, and it was the perfect time to attack. Attack when the men are asleep. And so during this battle of San Jacinto, the battle cry was, "Remember the Alamo." Houston's men killed around 600 Mexican soldiers, and they took about 700 more captured. This included Santa Anna himself. And on May 14th, 1836, Santa Anna signed a treaty that recognized the independence of Texas. Okay, you would think this would be all, but that's just the beginning of the story. So in September, Sam Houston was elected president of Texas in 1836 and petitioned the American government to annex Texas, meaning to take it over. Andrew Jackson, who was president at the time, refused, and Texas became an independent country known as the Lone Star Republic. Hence, if you look at the flag down below, this is kind of what the Texas state flag looks like. It's got a lone star on it. In 1844, James K. Polk became president, and Congress passed a resolution to annex Texas. And Texas was annexed in 1844, officially became a state on December 29th, 1845. And the rest, they say, is history. Thank you very much.